My name is Harold Turner, but most people in Springfield call me Hal. I'm 56 years old, and for 30 years I built my drainage and excavation company with my own hands, one muddy job site at a time. I know the way to wet clay, the sound of a good diesel engine starting cold, and the kind of silence that settles over a man when he realizes the life he paid for is no longer his. Until 2 weeks ago, I thought I still had a family. My daughter Lacey was getting married in October. I was paying for most of it. The barn venue outside Rogersville, the live band from Branson, the catering truck she wanted because she said plated dinners felt too stiff, even the honeymoon cabin down by Table Rock. I wrote the checks without complaint. She was my only daughter. I told myself a father gets one shot at doing this right. That Tuesday evening, Lacey asked if she could come out of the house to talk details. Her voice sounded too careful. I knew that tone. People use it when they're walking towards something ugly and hoping you'll make it easy for them. She came in just after 6. Her hair was tied back, no makeup, oversized gray sweatshirt, fingernails bitten down. Janice was already in the kitchen, pretending to wipe the same clean counter for the 3rd time. That told me enough right there. Whatever this was, my wife already knew. I was standing at the island with a cup of black coffee gone lukewarm when Lacey said, "Dad, please just let me explain before you react." I looked at her. That usually means I'm not going to like it. She swallowed hard. "It's about the wedding." Janice finally turned around, folding the dish towel in her hands like she was on stage and had practiced a gesture. Hal let her finish. That was when my chest went cold. Lacey kept her eyes off me. I've decided I want Evan to walk me down the aisle. For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard her. Evan Cole, my former business partner, the man I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, the same man I had caught too close to my wife more than once, though never with enough proof to force the truth into daylight. I set my coffee cup down carefully. "You mean Evan Cole?" She nodded once. "Not me, Evan." The room went so quiet, I could hear the refrigerator hum and a dog barking somewhere across the street. "Why?" I asked. Lacey finally looked at me, and there was guilt in her face, but not enough to stop her. "Because he's been there for me in ways you haven't." Janice stepped in softly, too softly. "Hal, this isn't meant to hurt you." That was the first real lie of the evening. I looked from my daughter to my wife, and in that moment, I understood something simple and final. This conversation hadn't started tonight. It had been building behind my back for a long time. I nodded once. "Calm. Steady. I see." Lacey looked almost confused by how easy that sounded. But I did see. And once a man sees clearly, he stops begging to be chosen. I didn't argue with them. That seemed to bother Janice more than if I'd slammed a door. Lacey stood there waiting for me to fight for the role. Maybe raise my voice. Maybe ask how she could do this to me. Janice watched me the way people watch a fuse after lighting it. But I'd spent too many years in business to waste energy on a reaction when information was more useful. I picked up my coffee again, took one swallow, and said, "All right." Lacey blinked. "That's it. That's it." Janice narrowed her eyes. She knew me well enough to understand calm didn't mean surrender. Calm meant I'd already started thinking. Lacey left 20 minutes later. Janice followed her out to porch, where they talked in low voices under the yellow light by the front door. I stayed in the kitchen and rinsed out my cup. My hands were steady. That was what I noticed most. No shaking, no heat in my face, just a hard, clean stillness. After their cars were gone, I drove downtown to my office. My company building sits on the edge of an industrial strip behind a fencing supplier and a diesel repair shop. At night, it always smells like oil, damp gravel, and paper that's been sitting too long in file cabinets. I let myself in, turned on the lamp in my office, and sat behind the same metal desk I'd had since 1998. On the corner was a white folder labeled Lacey Wedding. I opened it and laid everything out in front of me. Contracts, deposits, final payment dates, the barn venue, the live band, the food truck, floral balance, photographer, honeymoon cabin. Most of it had been booked through my office because Lacey said I was better with details. I remember that now and almost smiled. I made the first call at 8:14. The barn owner answered on the second ring. I told him I needed to withdraw funding and cancel under the terms of the contract. He sounded surprised, but not confused. Men who run venues in small towns hear strain in a voice before they hear words. He confirmed the cancellation and told me what portion of the deposit was non-refundable. Understood, I said. Next was the band, then the catering truck, then the cabin reservation near Table Rock. I moved line by line, check by check, like I was closing out a project that had gone bad. No speeches, no explanations, just business. By 10 o'clock, half the wedding was gone. I leaned back in my chair and looked through the office window into the dark yard where two excavators sat parked side by side, their buckets resting in the dirt. Heavy equipment always looks honest to me. It does exactly what it's built to do. People are usually the opposite. My phone buzzed once. A text from Janice. "Where are you?" I looked at it for a few seconds, then set the phone face down. There was still more to cancel in the morning, and for the first time all evening, I felt something close to peace. Janice was waiting in the kitchen when I got home. Same dish towel, same counter. This time, she wasn't pretending to clean anything. She was standing still, arms crossed, eyes sharp. The house felt different already, like something had shifted out of place and wasn't going back. "You turned your phone off," she said. "No," I replied, setting my keys down. I just didn't answer. Her jaw tightened. Vendors had been calling Lacey. I poured myself a glass of water, took a slow sip, let the silence stretch just enough to make her uncomfortable. "That makes sense," I said. "How?" Her voice dropped, controlled but edged. "What did you do?" I leaned back against the counter, glass in hand. I canceled what I paid for. For a moment, she just stared at me like she was trying to decide if I was serious. "You can't do that." I already did. Her composure cracked a little then. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quick flash in her eyes. "That is unbelievably petty." I almost smiled at that word. Petty, 30 years of providing. And the first time I stopped, it was called petty. I set the glass down carefully. No, petty would have been making a scene in front of her, or asking questions you don't want to answer. Her face went still. Good. That landed where it needed to. "This is simple," I continued. "Lacey made a decision. I respected it. You punished her." I adjusted my involvement. Janice shook her head, pacing once across the kitchen like she needed movement to keep control. "You're her father. That doesn't just stop because she made one decision you don't like." "It didn't stop," I said calmly. "It changed." She turned on me then. "Over Evan? You're still holding on to that? That was years ago." There it was. Not denial. Minimization. I held her gaze. If Evan is stepping into my place, then he can step into everything that comes with it. Her lips parted slightly. She hadn't expected that. "You mean..." I cut in, voice even. If he's walking her down the aisle, he can pay for the aisle. Silence filled the kitchen again, thicker this time. Janice looked at me like she was seeing someone unfamiliar. That happens when people realize a version of you they relied on is no longer available. "You're really doing this," she said quietly. "Yes." No yelling, no fighting, just this. "That's right." She let out a slow breath, but there was something unsettled underneath it now, because anger she could handle, emotion she could argue with. This wasn't either. This was a boundary, and boundaries don't move just because someone pushes on them. "I hope you're ready for what this does," she said. I nodded once. I am. What I didn't say was that it had already been done. I was just the last one to act on it. The next morning, I got to the office before sunrise. Springfield was still half asleep. The streets were empty, the air cold enough to bite a little when I stepped out of my truck. I unlocked the door, flipped on the lights, and the place came alive in that quiet, humming way it always did. Like it was waiting for direction. I didn't go straight to my desk. Instead, I walked past the back room, the file room, metal cabinets, old contracts, tax records going back decades, things most people forget exist until they need them. I hadn't touched some of those drawers since Evan and I split the company. That thought stayed with me for a second. Then I opened a cabinet labeled 2018 to 2020. Evan Cole. I hadn't said his name out loud in years, but it was sitting right there on multiple folders, typed clean and official. Back when we were still partners. Back when I trusted him enough to let him handle numbers while I handled the field work. I pulled the folders out and set them on the long table. At first, I wasn't looking for anything specific. Just reviewing. That's what I told myself. Going through old agreements. Buyout terms. Email printouts we used to keep for records. Then I saw it. A printed email chain. Clipped together. Dated March 2019. Subject line. Transition strategy. I frowned slightly. That wasn't a phrase Evan and I used with each other. Too formal. Too calculated. I sat down and started reading. The first email was from Evan, not to me, to a lawyer I recognized. Corporate guy out of Kansas City. We'd only use once for a minor contract issue. If we restructure ownership under performance clauses, I believe I can justify removing Hal within 12 to 18 months. I read that line twice. Slowly. Carefully. No anger. Just clarity. The next emails laid it out even cleaner. Suggestions about shifting financial control. Creating pressure points. Leveraging operational inefficiencies, his words, not mine, to force me into a position where I'd either sell cheap or be pushed out. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't messy. It was planned, deliberate, professional. I leaned back in the chair, the paper still in my hand. So it hadn't started with my wife. That came later. This started with the business. The affair wasn't a mistake. It was access. I went through the rest of the folder. More emails, notes, draft agreements that never got executed. All of it pointing in the same direction. A long game that didn't fully succeed, but never really stopped either. I thought about Lacey, about her saying Evan had been there for her, about Janice defending him like he was misunderstood, and I saw the shape of it now. Not just betrayal, influence, carefully applied over time. I stacked the papers neatly, tapped them against the table to align the edges, and slid them back into the folder. Then I undid the folder away. I carried it back to my office and set it on my desk, right next to the wedding file that was now half empty. 2 projects, one old, one recent, both connected. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Lacey. Dad, vendors are saying things are canceled. What's going on? I looked at the message, then at the folder in front of me, and for the first time since this started, I understood something important. This wasn't just about stepping back. This was about finishing something that should have been handled years ago. I picked up the phone, but I didn't answer yet. Lacey showed up at my office just after noon. She didn't call first. That wasn't like her. She usually texted, waited, tried to keep things smooth. Today she walked straight and like she had something to prove. I could hear her boots on the concrete before she even knocked. I didn't look up right away. I finished writing a number on a contract, capped my pen, then said, "Doors open." She stepped in, tense, eyes already searching my face for reaction. "Dad, what are you doing?" Straight to it. No small talk. I leaned back slightly in my chair. "Working. You canceled half my wedding." "I canceled what I was paying for." Her hands tightened at her sides. "That's the same thing." "No," I said calmly. "It isn't." She let out a frustrated breath and started pacing the small office, glancing at the excavators outside like she needed somewhere else to put her focus. Evan said this was exactly how you'd react. That caught my attention, not because of what she said, because of how easily she said it. I tilted my head slightly. "Did he?" "Yeah," she replied quickly. "He said you'd make it about control, about money, that you wouldn't be able to handle not being in charge." I watched her for a second, not angry, just observing. "He's been helping me see things more clearly," she added, softer now, "about how you operate." There was again language that didn't sound like hers. "Lacey," I said, "how often do you talk to him?" She hesitated, just a fraction too long. "Sometimes." "About the wedding?" "About a lot of things." I nodded slowly. "Including my finances?" She stopped pacing. That landed. I mean, not like that, she said quickly. Just general stuff. He understands business, Dad. He's been explaining things. Like how you structure your money, how you make decisions. She cut herself off. Too late. The room went quiet. I folded my hands on the desk. Go on. Her face shifted. Not defensive yet. Confused. Like she just realized she stepped somewhere she wasn't supposed to. He just said, she continued carefully, that sometimes you hold things too tightly, that it creates pressure, that people around you feel managed. I almost smiled, not because it was funny, because it was precise. That's how Evan worked. He didn't attack directly. He reframed, slowly, patiently, until people started believing his version felt like their own thoughts. And the money? I asked. She looked away. He just said you'd never actually cut me off, that you'd make a statement, but in the end you'd still pay because that's who you are. I let that sit between us. Then I nodded once. Then this is probably confusing for him. Lacey looked back at me, searching again. Why are you being like this? Like what? So calm. Because calm reveals things anger never will. I reached over and tapped the folder on my desk, the one with Evan's emails inside. You said he helped you grow. I said, how exactly? She relaxed a little, thinking she'd ground again. When things were bad last year, when you and Mom were barely talking, he checked in. He listened. He gave advice. He made me feel like I wasn't crazy. I nodded. Support, access, influence, all in the right order. And he never said anything negative about me. I asked. She hesitated again. That was enough of an answer. I stood up slowly, walked around the desk, and stopped a few feet in front of her. Lacey, I said, voice steady, do you trust him? Yes, she said immediately. No doubt. That was the problem. I held her gaze for a moment longer, then nodded once. Okay. She blinked. Okay. Okay. Confusion replaced her certainty again, because she came here expecting a fight, and I was giving her something else entirely. Space. Enough space for the truth to catch up with her. She left a few minutes later, still unsettled, still trying to figure out why I wasn't reacting the way she'd been prepared for. When the door closed, I looked back at the folder on my desk. Evan hadn't just been planning against me. He'd been preparing everyone around me too, slowly, carefully, for years. And now, finally, I was done letting him. By the next morning, Springfield knew. Not all at once. Not loudly. That's not how it works in a town like this. It spreads quieter than that. Through phone calls, side conversations, pauses in sentences that last just a second too long. It started with the vendors. The barn owner called Lacey again, this time asking if the cancellation was a mistake. The band wanted confirmation. The food truck sent a message asking who would be responsible for the remaining balance. By noon, those same people had started calling others. And by 2, my phone started ringing. I let it ring the first few times. Sat at my desk, looking out at the yard, listening to the low hum of an engine somewhere down the street. Eventually, I picked up. Hal, came a familiar voice. Rick Dalton, runs a fencing supply next door. Known him 15 years. Heard there's some confusion about a wedding, he said. There isn't, I replied. A short pause. Then quieter, you good? That question mattered more than the rest. I'm fine, I said. Another pause. Then he exhaled. All right, just so you know, people are talking. I figured. Not the way you think, he added. That got my attention. How's that? Rick cleared his throat slightly. Word is, folks aren't exactly lining up to help Evan. I didn't say anything. He continued. Couple vendors already said they won't rebook unless you're back involved. Something about not wanting to get in the middle of whatever this is. I leaned back in my chair. Interesting. Appreciate the call, I said. Yeah, he replied. Take care of yourself, Hal. When I hung up, the office felt different. Not lighter, just clearer. An hour later, I got another call. Then another. Same pattern. Different voices. People I'd worked with for years. Men and women who'd see me show up on time, pay on time, and fix problems without excuses. No one asked for details. They didn't need them. In small towns, reputation fills in the blanks faster than facts ever could. Around 4, Janice called. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. What did you do? She demanded immediately. Nothing new, I said. You've turned this into a public spectacle. I made private decisions, I replied. Other people are choosing what to do with them. Her breathing sharpened on the other end. Vendors are backing out on Evan. People are refusing to work with him. Do you understand what that looks like? Yes. It looks like you're trying to ruin him. I considered that for a moment. No, I said calmly. It looks like people are making their own decisions. That's not how this works, and you know it. That's exactly how it works. Silence. Then lower, tighter. Lacey is humiliated. That word hung there. I looked out the window again. Same yard, same machines. Nothing had changed out there. Lacey made a choice. I said, this is what choices look like when they meet reality. Janice didn't respond right away. When she finally spoke, her voice had shifted. Less anger, more uncertainty. This isn't going to end the way you think. I nodded slightly, even though she couldn't see it. It already has, I said. And I meant it, because for the first time, the pressure wasn't on me to hold everything together. It had moved. And once pressure shifts, people start showing exactly who they are when they have to carry it. I left 3 days later. No announcement, no explanation. I packed one bag early in the morning before the sun came up. Jeans, 2 flannels, a heavy jacket, and the old tackle box I hadn't touched in years. The house was quiet. Janice's door was closed. I didn't knock. Some conversations don't need to happen twice. My truck was already loaded with a few things I'd moved over the past year. Small items. Quiet decisions made long before anyone noticed I was pulling away. The lake house sat in northern Arkansas, about 3 hours out if you didn't rush. I bought it 5 years ago under a separate holding name. No one asked questions at the time. I didn't offer answers. It wasn't much. 1 floor, with siding faded by sun. A narrow dock stretching into still, dark water. No neighbors close enough to wave at. No cell signal half the time. It was enough. I arrived just after noon. The air smelled like pine and damp earth. The kind of smell that settles you without asking permission. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and set my bag down on the floor. No noise, no tension, just space. I stood there for a minute, listening to nothing, then walked out to the dock. The lake was flat, not a ripple. I sat down at the edge, opened the tackle box, and started setting up a line like my hands still remembered the order better than my mind did. Hook, wait, line through the eye, tighten, simple things. By the time I cast out, the sun had shifted just enough to warm the water's surface. I leaned back, rod resting loosely in my hand, eyes on the horizon. No phone, no voices, no one asking me to explain myself. Sometime in the afternoon, I took a picture. Nothing special, just a lake, the rod in the frame, a corner of my boot. I sent it to one person. Rick, no message attached. An hour later, my phone buzzed once. A reply, looks about right. That evening, I grilled a piece of fish on the small iron grate out back. Ate it sitting on the steps, watching the light fade slow and steady. I slept better that night than I had in years. The next morning, my phone had signal again. 3 missed calls from Janice, 5 from Lacey, 2 unknown numbers, and a message from Rick. You might want to stay off Facebook for a bit. I didn't have Facebook, but that didn't mean anything. I called him instead. What happened? I asked. He let out a low breath. That picture you sent me, it got around. Of course it did. How far? I asked. Far enough, he said. People are calling it, I don't know, a statement. I looked out at the lake again. Same still water. Same quiet. What kind of statement? I asked. Rick hesitated, then said, walking away without begging. I didn't respond right away, because that wasn't what I was doing. I wasn't walking away. I was stepping out of something that had already ended. Evan's not handling it well, Rick added. Neither is Janice. I nodded slightly, even though he couldn't see me. Not my concern, I said. But I knew something had shifted again. Not just pressure this time, perception. And in a town like ours, perception can break a man faster than truth ever will. I came back to Springfield on a Thursday. Didn't stay the night. Didn't go home. I drove straight from the lake to my office, parked in the same spot, and sat there for a minute with the engine off. The building looked exactly the same. Nothing about it showed what had been happening underneath the surface for years. That's the thing about slow damage. From the outside, it looks stable right up until it doesn't. Inside, the air smelled the same: paper, dust, oil. Familiar, controlled. I walked to my desk, set my keys down, and pulled out the folder with Evan's emails. Then I made a call. "Evan," I said when he picked up. A pause. Not long, but enough. "How?" He sounded tight, careful, like a man trying to figure out which version of me he was dealing with. "I'm in town," I said. "Office, if you want to talk." Another pause. "I'll be there in 20. He showed up in 15. Same posture, same expensive watch, same habit of scanning a room before fully stepping into it. But there was something underneath now. Pressure. You could hear in the way he shut the door just a little too hard. "You've caused a mess," he said. I gestured to the chair across from me. "Sit." He didn't. "We need to fix this." I leaned back. "Do we?" His jaw flexed. "Lacey's wedding is falling apart. Vendors are pulling out. People are choosing." I corrected calmly. He exhaled sharply through his nose. "This doesn't help anyone." "No," I said. "It helps me." That landed. Silence stretched between us for a few seconds. Then I reached forward, opened a folder, and slid a single paper across the desk. He glanced at it, then looked again. His expression didn't explode. It didn't need to. It tightened, controlled, calculating. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "My files," I replied. He said nothing, because there was nothing to say. I closed the folder again and folded my hands. "You should have finished what you started back then." His eyes flicked up to mine. Careful. I held his gaze. "No. Precise." Another pause. Then I shifted slightly in my chair. "Let's talk about something useful." He didn't respond. "I'm willing to sell you the company," I said. That got his full attention. "You're serious?" he asked. "Yes." Suspicion replaced tension. "Why?" "Because you want to control for a long time," I said evenly, "and I'm done holding on to something people are already trying to take." He studied me, looking for the angle. "What's the number?" he asked. I told him. High enough to hurt, low enough to tempt. He didn't react right away. Just stood there, doing the math in his head. Not just the money, the opportunity, the image, the position it would give him in town, especially now. "You'd walk away?" he asked. "I already have," I said. That part was true. He paced once, then stopped. "I'd need to review terms." "Of course." I slid a second document across the desk. Pre-drafted. Clean. Professional. He looked at it, then back at me. "You move fast." "I move when I'm certain." He picked up the document and started flipping through it. His eyes moved quickly, scanning, catching the big pieces. Purchase price. Transfer timeline. Operational clauses. All standard. All clean. What he didn't do was slow down. Didn't sit. Didn't read the details twice. Because he was already thinking ahead. To ownership. To control. To finally stepping into the position he'd been circling for years. "You'll stay on during transition?" he asked. "For a short period," I said. "Just enough to hand things over." He nodded. That was the moment. The one where a man decides based on what he wants, not what he should question. "I'll have my lawyer look at it," he said. "Do that." He set the papers down carefully, like they already belonged to him. "We can both come out of this clean," he added. I almost smiled. "Clean," I repeated. He extended his hand. I looked at it for a second. Then I shook it. Firm. Steady. Final. Because what he didn't understand, what he had never understood, was that control isn't about taking something. It's about knowing exactly when to let someone else take it, especially when they don't realize what comes with it. It took less than 2 weeks. That's all it took for everything to start coming apart. I was back at the lake when Rick called again. Early morning. Fog, still sitting low over the water, barely lifting. "You sitting down?" he asked. "I'm fishing." I said. "That works," he replied. Then a pause. "The wedding's off." I didn't react right away. Just reeled in slowly. The line cutting a straight path through the surface. Completely? I asked. "Venue's gone. Band won't come back. Food truck booked somewhere else. And the cabin? Booked by another couple already." I nodded slightly. No rush. No chaos. Just consequences stacking up. "Evan tried to fix it," Rick continued. "Threw money at a couple places. But folks aren't biting. Not like before." "Why not?" Rick let out a quiet breath. "Because it's him now, not you." That was the difference. My name carried weight. His carried questions. I set the rod down beside me. "What about investors?" Another pause. "That's the bigger problem," Rick said. Word got around about the purchase. People started looking closer, asking how he's funding it. And he's stretched, Rick said plainly. Loans, short-term backing. A couple guys already getting nervous. I could picture it. Evan at a desk, phone in hand, voice tighter with each call. The same man who once planned everything 2 steps ahead, now reacting instead of controlling. "That's not all," Rick added. "Go on." Janice found something. That made me look up. "Found what?" "Debt," he said. "More than she knew about. And something legal. Not sure on details, but enough to shake her." I leaned back slightly, eyes on the lake. So even she didn't have the full picture. Interesting. "And Lacey?" I asked. Rick hesitated. "She's different," he said. Quiet, asking questions now. About money, about timelines, about things she probably should have asked before. I nodded once. That's how it happens. Not all at once. Just a shift, doubt replacing certainty. Truth slipping in where influence used to sit. Her fiancé? I asked. Another pause. "He's pulling back," Rick said. Can't blame him. Whole thing looks unstable now. Unstable. That was a clean word for it. I stood up slowly, stretching my back, looking out over the water that hadn't changed once through any of this. Sounds like things are correcting themselves. I said. Rick gave a low chuckle. That's one way to put it. We ended the call a minute later. I stayed on the dock, hands in my pockets, watching the fog finally lift off the lake, piece by piece. That's how it always goes. Not explosions, not dramatic endings. Just structures failing under their own weight once the support is gone. Evan thought he was taking control. Janice thought she understood him. Lacey thought she was choosing growth. None of them realized they were all standing on something I had built. And the moment I stepped away, there was nothing left holding it up. I didn't go back. Not for the fallout. Not for the explanations. Not even when the calls kept coming for a few more days. Slower each time, like something running out of breath. Eventually, they stopped. That's the thing about noise. It always fades when there's nothing left feeding it. I stayed at the lake. Mornings were simple. Coffee on the small porch. Mist over the water. The same routine, steady and quiet. I fixed a loose board on the dock. Repainted the door. Cooked my own meals. Things I hadn't had time for in years. No one asked anything from me. And for the first time, I noticed how much of my life had been built around being needed. A month passed. Then another. Rick called occasionally. Not with updates. Just to talk. But sometimes he'd mention things in between. Evan lost the company. Didn't happen overnight. But it didn't take long either. The clauses in the contract, the ones he didn't slow down to understand, started tightening around him. Performance requirements. Cash flow thresholds. Penalties that stacked quietly, just like everything else in his life. By the time he realized it, it was already done. He defaulted. Ownership transferred back through the structure I'd put in place. Not to me directly, just away from him. Janice left town shortly after. No big goodbye. No explanation. Just gone. People said she moved in with a relative out of state. No one seemed too surprised. Lacey stayed. That part mattered. I heard she called off the wedding officially, returned what she could, kept things small, quiet, different from what she'd planned, different from who she'd been. She didn't call me right away, and I didn't reach out. Some things need time to settle before they can be rebuilt. It was late October when I heard tires on the gravel outside the lake house. I was sitting on the dock, same as always, lying in the water, when I saw her step out of the car. Lacey. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, just less certain. Like something had been stripped away and hadn't been replaced yet. She walked slowly toward me, stopping a few feet back. "Hi, Dad." I didn't turn right away. Just reeled in, set the rod aside, and then looked at her. "Hi, Lacey." No anger. No warmth either. Just level. She nodded once, like she expected that. "I didn't know if you want to see me," she said. "I'm here," I replied. That was enough for her to step closer. For a moment, she didn't speak. Just looked out at the water, like she was trying to find the right place to start. "I was wrong," she said finally. Simple. No excuses attached. I watched her carefully. "I thought I understood things," she continued. "I thought," he was helping, "that he saw things clearly. But I didn't realize how much of what I believed came from him." She swallowed, hands clasped together. "And I didn't see what it was doing to you." I nodded once. "I know," I said. That hit her harder than if I'd argued, because it meant I'd seen it the whole time. "I don't expect things to go back," she added quickly. I want to fix what I can, if that's even possible." I stood up slowly, brushed my hands off of my jeans, and faced her fully. For a long time, I said, I made decisions based on keeping everything together, even when it cost me. She didn't interrupt. "I'm not doing that anymore." Her eyes flickered, but she nodded. "I understand. If we rebuild anything," I continued, "it's going to be different. Clear, honest. No one else in the middle." "Yes," she said immediately. Too quickly. But this time it came from her, not from someone behind her. I studied her for a moment longer, then nodded once. "All right." Relief didn't show all at once. It never does. But I saw it settle into her shoulders, just slightly. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Just the beginning. We stood there a while longer, side by side, looking out over the water. No rush to fill the silence. No need to force anything. Because peace isn't something you win. It's something you choose. And for the first time in a long time, I had,